Hey internet friends, put away your anti-immigration riot decorations. It's wars and rumors of wars season again. That's right, for the last several decades, U.S. citizens have been told by the mainstream media that Iran is a threat to our lives and our freedom. We've been told by our politicians that Iranian children are taught to chant "Death to America," and that Iranians are the #1 exporter of terror. Like clockwork, every single year, we've repeatedly been told Iran is only 2 weeks away from manufacturing nukes. Just 2 more weeks, y'all. Yeehaw! So why now? Why is the focus on Iran right now? Well, I think I've given you enough time. Do you have your decorations up yet? We're going to start this party off right with a clip from U.S. General Wesley Clark in 2007, who revealed that shortly after 9/11, he saw a Pentagon memo detailing the plan to overthrow the governments of 7 countries in 5 years: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. So let's take a look, shall we?
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the joint staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office, today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Basically, this guy states that the Pentagon plan wasn't about terrorism, but about asserting U.S. control over strategic regions. And while it's obvious that this exact timeline wasn't exactly followed, many of these countries have since faced U.S.-backed interventions, regime change efforts, or just have been completely destabilized. Let's go back to June 13th, 2025, when Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, military leaders, and infrastructure. Israeli intelligence claimed that Iran had amassed enough enriched uranium to produce up to 15 nuclear weapons within days. And Israel claimed that they were striking Iran on behalf of the rest of the free world, including U.S. citizens. Really taking one for the team. We really owe them. By the way, what is a preemptive strike? What in the George W. Bush terminology is that?
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here.
After attacking Iran, Israel immediately declared a state of emergency, then acted shocked and surprised when Iran retaliated with missile attacks. And they've been going back and forth every night ever since. Now, the U.S. military is getting served lobster and steak, which is a deployment indicator, because everyone knows that surf and turf really boosts morale before you go and die for more forever wars. By the way, I'm not anti-U.S. military at all. I'm sorry if you got served surf and turf and are watching this. Yesterday, Trump said he's going to take the next 2 weeks to decide whether or not he's going to get the U.S. directly involved. I thought Congress votes on that. But anyway, the U.S. is directly involved anyway, since so many of our tax dollars go to Israel, where they have free healthcare. And the majority of our politicians get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from the Israeli lobby, otherwise known as AIPAC. Lobby for what, I wonder? What are we lobbying for? Well, I guess we're about to find out, y'all.
If you take away the Soviet Union and its chief proxy, the PLO, international terrorism would collapse.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. Obviously, we'd like to see a regime change, at least I would, in Iran, just as I would like to see in Iraq. The question now is a practical question. What is the best place to proceed? It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? It's not a question of whether you'd like to see a regime change in Iran, but how do it...
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The answer is categorically yes. The two nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran. But a third nation, by the way, is Libya as well. Libya is trying very rapidly to build an atomic bomb capability. So you have here now three nations.
All stand together to stop Iran's march of conquest, subjugation, and terror. I know that no matter on which side of the aisle you sit, you stand with Israel.
So why Iran? I feel like the manufacturing of consent on getting Americans to go into the same war over and over is really enhanced by the fact that Iran is in a place in which most of us will never step foot. I don't know about you, but I'm personally never taking my family summer vacation to Iran or Iraq or Afghanistan. Americans just don't have any roots there. We don't identify with the people or their culture. We're programmed by public school and media to dislike these folks anyway. And we don't see the realities of war and destruction on our daily commute to our 9 to 5, so it's whatever. It's not like we're even taught the real history of these places. Persia, now modern-day Iran, was once a great empire, an unbelievable force in culture, language, math, innovation, which happened to sit atop a wealth of natural resources. For the purposes of this section, we're talking black gold, or oil. Our fates are just as intertwined as our histories. And the once great empire of Persia was plundered by another once great empire, the British Empire. At the turn of the century, the Brits decided to make the Iranian oil fields their playground, and the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company was created in 1908. As a result, the British Navy switched from powering their ships with coal to powering their ships with oil. So Gog and Magog, Britain's been there for over a century, getting rich and benefiting from Persian oil. And PSA, this is not me hounding on colonialism or making a moral judgment, just telling you how things are and the reality of what has taken place. And it's always important to give this context to remember that after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, with the Sykes-Picot Treaty in 1916, Great Britain and France divided the Middle Eastern territories under the former Ottoman Empire as they saw fit, basically just willy-nilly. Disregarding, who believed what, who's fighting who, cultural differences, they didn't care. Shaping Middle Eastern borders and overall adding to tensions that we still to this day feel the reverberations of. Keep in mind that Rothschild Island, Israel, Iran's neighbor, was promised to the Rothschild family in their Zionist movement in 1917 by the British through the Balfour Declaration. And putting a bunch of Jewish Europeans in the Middle East after World War II really didn't do anything to ease these already existing tensions and instability, especially since people were already living in Palestine and got booted out because they weren't considered God's chosen people. Because European Zionists believe they are Bible Jews and the surrounding swarthy Middle Eastern people are not. Okay? The problem is, just being objective, Israel wasn't the greatest place to give away because they don't have much in the way of crude oil reserves or fresh water or timber or land that can be used to grow varied crops. Plus, Israel is the size of New Jersey. Comparatively, Iran is 75 times bigger than Israel. Iran borders Afghanistan, Iraq, the Caspian Sea, the Persian Gulf. Essentially, Iran controls the region's energy and trade routes due to its strategic position. The oil stopped flowing to Great Britain in 1951 when Iranians elected Mossadegh, who was a secular leader who wanted to nationalize and take back Iran's oil. The UK and the USA, as exposed by these released declassified files, admitted to overthrowing Iran's democratically elected leadership in 1953 when they staged a coup. So Western interests could get control over the oil once more to rebuild their economies in the aftermath of World War II. But when the Brits came back, they changed the name of the oil company from Anglo-Iranian Oil to British Petroleum, or BP. So now we're pretty much caught up on what is not normally covered when we're talking about this conflict, and this is where American public school education likes to start the talking points. in 1979. The Iranian Revolution was taking place, and the CIA had their hands all over everything, just like they've done with the color revolutions over the last several decades. The CIA is just this ever-present subversive force, financing and arming jihadists in the Middle East, particularly Afghanistan at this time through Operation Cyclone. Anyway, the Iranian Revolution was taking place at this time, yielding several results. A new supreme leader, a new constitution for the Islamic Republic of Iran, the 1979 oil crisis, the beginning of the Iran-Iraq War, which Iraq initially started, and, of course, the Iranian hostage crisis. Iconic. The crisis occurred when a group of Iranian students who supported the revolution took over the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and they took 52 Americans hostage. The hostages weren't released until 444 days later on the inauguration day of President Ronald Reagan. And basically, the U.S. promised Iran that they wouldn't meddle in Iranian affairs anymore. We promise, but our fingers are crossed behind our backs. And they lifted the trade sanctions so that they got the hostages back, essentially. So just to summarize, Persia was once a great empire, and Great Britain basically raided all the oil fields until they were told to leave. The Industrial Revolution changed everything for the Middle East because it became a source of the world's oil, and destabilization in the region had been building since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. But all of that chaos and destabilization was compounded by the Sykes-Picot Treaty, the Balfour Declaration, and the State of Israel. Whenever Iran tried to take their oil fields back, the leadership was ousted by the CIA, after which British Petroleum moved back to plunder the fields. Iran once had a secular government, but the Iranian Revolution installed the Islamic Republic of Iran, with more top-down control over its people. Religion, of course, can be used to control large swaths of people. This marked a shift in Iranian culture. But it's dishonest to portray Iran as the sole aggressor or terrorist state that the American people have been inherently fearful of. When honestly, when you put it all in perspective, Iranians have put up with a lot for over a century. And they haven't started a war themselves in several centuries. They just respond when they're hit. Remember, Americans have also been dubbed terrorists by the British government not too long ago during the American Revolution. The boogeyman is convenient, it's ever-changing, but war is always the same. The pattern at large here for the last 100 years is to destabilize a region and install a puppet which can be controlled by whatever you want to call it, Western interests, the New World Order, Zog, whatever. Ever since the Iranian Revolution, the American media has told us that Iran is 2 weeks away from building nukes all the time, every single year.
It will take Iran about 12 months to enrich enough nuclear material for a single nuclear weapon.
United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is warning that Iran is potentially just months away or less from nuclear breakpoint.
Iran is 2 months away from a nuclear weapon, and it's a victory to get them 1 year away?
Iran could be less than a month away from building a nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu has made 2 tough-talking TV appearances, saying that Iran is just months away from making a nuclear bomb.
What is important to understand is that you have to dismantle the entire terror empire, and especially before its main practitioners, the terror states of Iran and Iraq, acquire nuclear weapons. And this, I think, has been a wake-up call from hell. It is telling us, you have the power now to act.
And we're told that in addition to having nukes, as if that wasn't bad enough, they chant death to America and dislike our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel, who buys and blackmails most of our politicians. Iran sits on the 4th largest oil reserves in the world and the 2nd largest natural gas supply after Russia. Iran officially announced the discovery of significant lithium deposits in March of 2023. And of course, it's like lithium is the new oil because lithium is critical for batteries and electric vehicles and energy storage and electronics. It goes on and on. They actually built this huge, disgusting battery plant near me just outside of Cartersville. It's very bleak and dystopian. But anyway, beyond resources, Iran's geography is a strategic asset for military basing or pipeline routes. And as of the current year, 9 countries, the United States, Russia, United Kingdom, France, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea have verified nuclear weapons. Take all of what I just said with a grain of salt because I'm just reporting on what has been reported. Iran does not have verified nuclear weapons or a stockpile of them like the aforementioned countries do. but they do have a nuclear program that dates back to the 1950s. And there are all these recent reports that Iran has hordes of enriched uranium with the capability to make a nuke. So what's being implied by all these headlines in the MSM is that if Iran has the incentive, if they hate America enough, if they chant death to America enough, and they have all the resources to make a nuke, they have the incentive. They probably will make one. And we should all be afraid. We should be really afraid. In fact, we should intervene. Don't you want that? Personally, I think the whole nukes thing is based in a lot of boogeyman fear. I have a nuke, so if you bother me, I'll nuke you, so don't mess with me, okay? If I were a country who didn't have a nuke, I would be saying I did, just so the CIA wouldn't burst in to subvert my entire civilization. But that's just me. And remember, I'm a ginger, so I err on the side of very aggressive. Every time tensions with Iran rise, so do the stock prices of U.S. defense contractors. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. Fear is a moneymaker, and a war with Iran would be a gold mine. In 2015, Iran and the UN and the EU got together to form the Iranian nuclear deal to limit Iranian nuclear activities so the world could have peace. This whole nuclear deal is defunct because Trump pulled out in 2018 and Iranians reportedly exceeded the limits of what they could and couldn't do. Is it not weird that Pakistan gets nukes and Israel gets nukes and North Korea gets nukes, if we're to believe all this theater in the script, but Iran doesn't? Israel has nukes, doesn't disclose them, and isn't compliant with the international standards of having their warhead. So they're in direct violation of UN rules, but somehow the United States taxpayer funds their country. Also, I'm Americans first, not the American government, so I'm not beholden to this sort of circular argument or propagandized talking points. So why wouldn't Iran want to expand its weapons programs? Doesn't every country want to expand its weapons programs so it can, I don't know, stay a country and not get conquered? All of Iran's neighbors have fallen in recent years, like Iraq and Syria. These countries dropped the petrodollar, and as a result, all hell was unleashed on these countries. Look at Gaddafi. I need you on your keyboard to answer this question if you're American. If you had inherited your grandpa's stash of Confederate gold, the missing Confederate gold, and everyone sort of knew about it and they knew you were sitting on top of this pile of gold, wouldn't you want a gun so you could sit there and protect what's yours? If you have no means to protect what's yours, somebody's just going to come up and take it and probably slap you across the face and make you say thank you. So like I said at the beginning of this video, Israel attacked Iran, sorry, my geopolitical voice is failing me, on June 13th as a preemptive strike to allegedly halt Iran's advancing nuclear program and assert dominance in the region. Because Israel thinks it's backed by the West, and it is to an extent by Western politicians because it's documented that they've lobbied for their support. Israel states that they're doing the West a favor by wounding Iran, targeting their nuclear sites and military leaders. But since Iran is aligned with Russia and China, among other BRICS countries, or countries who seek to exchange oil and other currency or form of trade besides the petrodollar, it's looking like they're instigating a bigger war. Some have said World War III. Israel and the West have been successful at framing this conflict like Iran started it. They threw the first rock sort of thing, but in fact, on paper, they did not. I can't just go smack my neighbor and then turn around and tell you all to pray for me and my family because we're under attack. Trump says he's still deciding if the U.S. is going to be directly involved in war, like boots on the ground. There are reports of warships being staged presently. Like I've said for years, Iran, it's nothing personal. The real issue is that our British-turned-American empire operates off of paper money backed by nothing, not gold or silver or anything. Its value resides in the confidence to exchange it for goods and services and oil sales. And when the oil sales are no longer done in dollars and the Federal Reserve resumes printing the dollar at an unprecedented rate, that means the empire is not long for this world. We got to have war to sustain ourselves in these 750 military bases across 80 countries. Israel has to have war to expand to the greater Israel, the territory of their neighbors, because they ain't got nothing going. They ain't got nothing going on to sustain themselves or fulfill their Talmudic goals, their manifest destiny. Because at the end of the day, you can't power machinery, you can't feed people with Epstein-style political blackmail, digging nefarious tunnels under New York. You just can't. You don't feed people that way. You gotta have water. You gotta have some kind of natural resource. You gotta expand. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. What do you think, internet friends? I always look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for watching, for subscribing, for supporting my channel on Patreon, for buying my book, The Deep State Encyclopedia. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.